There's been very few times in history where a team reaches the NBA Finals and then, the season after, they lose in the first round. It's even more rare for this to happen to both teams. The last time I can think of something like this happening is maybe 2007? The Heat and Mavs reached the finals in 06, but then both of them lost in the first round in 07. The Heat suffered from injuries and lost to the Bulls, while the Mavs got shockingly bounced by the 8th-seeded Warriors. However, fast forward to now and it has happened again. The rosters between this year and last year have changed slightly for these guys, but for the most part, the core players have remained the same. What really caused them from being a finals contender to losing in the first round? And what's in store for the future? How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and let's get started. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Omaze, a fundraising platform where everyone has a chance to win once-in-a-lifetime prizes, while raising funds for charities at the same time. I'm excited to announce our new campaign, a brand new 2021 Lamborghini Urus, plus an additional $20,000 in cash. With a max horsepower of 641, a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, 8-speed automatic transmission, this 2021 Urus is the world's first ever super SUV. All you have to do is go to omaze.com/andyhoops to enter. The best part of it is every donation supports Pencils of Promise, a foundation that believes every child should have access to quality education. Once again, that's omaze.com/andyhoops for your chance to win a 2021 Lamborghini Urus, plus $20,000 in cash, and all your donations will support a good cause. First, the Miami Heat. In the 2020 playoffs, they shockingly defeated the Milwaukee Bucks in dominating fashion. The entire team was on point, their shooting was immaculate, and Jimmy Butler looked like he was on a mission. That wasn't the case this year. Butler is a guy who's known to step it up in the playoffs. Playoff Jimmy is a real thing. It just didn't happen. Instead, he registered arguably the worst playoff series of his entire career. Take a look at the difference between the 2020 series against Milwaukee and the 2021 series. Yikes, that's insane. I've never seen a player have such a huge drop-off from one season to another. You could literally point to Butler's performance as the sole reason why the Heat went from winning in 5 to getting swept. Of course, it was a huge reason, but there's more to it. For the series, as a team, they shot less than 40% from the field, but even worse, they shot 38% on open shots. Open shots meaning attempts where a defender was more than 6 feet away from them. That's really bad. The Heat were scorching hot from the field in 2020, but they went ice cold this time, even on open shots. You can't really do much about that, maybe more practice and more shoot-arounds or something, but sometimes you're just ice cold and can't hit anything. It happens. Of course, that should not discredit the Bucks defense though. Drew Holiday was a major addition, as whenever he got caught in a switch, he can stand his ground. Definitely a major improvement over Eric Bledsoe. PJ Tucker was also a huge addition. The Bucks needed that toughness and physicality he brought to the wings, and that's exactly what they were missing in previous years. Both of them also took turns guarding Jimmy, and over the course of the series, he got worn down. That's the biggest change if you compare this Bucks team to the previous ones. They're much more physical, they got more players willing to grind and hustle and do the dirty work. This translated to a much greater effort on the glass. In 4 games, the Bucks recorded 61 offensive boards, 15 offensive rebounds a game, which is insane. Giannis himself grabbed 14 alone in 4 games, compared to the Heat, who grabbed just 36 over the course of the series. That difference led to so many second-chance points for the Bucks that they didn't have previously. The addition of Bryn Forbes was an overlooked acquisition over the offseason. Outside of Middleton, Forbes is their most consistent three-point shooter. He's always been like that, ever since his younger days in San Antonio. The man can shoot. He's a legit three-point threat. In fact, Bryn Forbes outscored Jimmy Butler in this series, which is honestly embarrassing for Jimmy. There were also some questionable play calls from Eric Spoelstra, and he's gotten criticized for his failure to adjust. But to be fair, I don't think anyone thinks he's a bad coach. I mean, you can't go from being a great coach last year to a bad coach this year. The team just couldn't hit shots and were stunned at the physicality the Bucks brought this year. Plus, I'd imagine fatigue played a role too. The Heat and Lakers both played until October, and training camp began in December. They had maybe a month and a half to rest, which NBA players are typically not used to. Anyway, moving on to the Lakers. I know there's a lot of guys who are gonna make excuses for them. Oh, they were too tired. LeBron is too old now, so he needed more rest, but the season started too quickly. He wasn't 100% because of his ankle injuries. Davis had groin problems in the series and missed some games because of it. Actually, the Lakers were up 2-1 before Davis got injured in Game 4 with a strained groin. In an article by Harrison Fagan of SB Nation, he described it quite nicely. Davis's absence showed his value. Without him in the playoffs, the Lakers were lost at center, and their league-best defense started to show cracks. They didn't have the offensive punch to make up for it and get over the hump and to survive horrendous and scared shooting. Now, as much as I hate giving teams an excuse, these are legit excuses. I mean, LeBron wasn't as healthy as before, that was clear, and Davis, their best defender, got hurt in the middle of the series. For LeBron, before his injury, he was having an incredible year, and his playoff performance didn't look anything like that. According to NBA.com's dashboard, LeBron scored on 68% of his drives in the regular season. But in the playoffs, he only managed to score on 49% of them. That was visible on the court. Every time LeBron tried to drive, the defense collapsed onto him and he had a difficult look every time. That's a massive drop-off in efficiency that can't be explained by just his ankle problems, and the Suns deserve a lot of credit for that. Of course, I know injuries are a huge deal to the Lakers' loss, but I hate it when people don't give the winners enough credit. The Suns are absolutely amazing. Devin Booker looked like the best player on the floor. DeAndre Ayton hit 80% of his shots, and even with Chris Paul struggling, they still won. The defense was suffocating, not just on LeBron, but they limited the Lakers to just 41% from the field and under 30% from three. That stat I just mentioned about LeBron earlier, you could tell how disciplined the Suns were. Every time he or anyone else drove into the paint, they saw numerous defenders and had trouble seeing any passing lanes. They did such a good job of limiting his options when he got close to the rim. And, of course, when LeBron and AD get shut down, the rest of the team gets shut down. This series was a microcosm of the Lakers' struggles throughout the season. Even before the injuries, their offense dropped off severely compared to the year before. They finished the season with the 7th worst offense in the league, which is seriously not good for a championship contending team. As bad as their offense was, the Lakers' defense was their biggest drop-off. Despite the injuries, the Lakers were still the #1 ranked defense in the league coming into the playoffs, but they looked very lackadaisical against the Suns. And it wasn't just because Davis was missing. Just look at how easy it was for them to score. Rotations weren't as crisp as before, and with their front court hindered, DeAndre Ayton feasted. In these clips, you can clearly see how the Suns beat them down. They focus on creating space, and if a guy is open, they take the shot. The ball movement has been their forte all season long, and the balanced attack threw off the Lakers' defense. If this was the Lakers in 2020, they would be desperately rotating and running around preventing these passing lanes, preventing any of these perimeter guys from getting a clean look. But you just don't see it this year. This team doesn't have the same hunger and motivation. By far the most impressive player in the series was Devin Booker. In the first playoff series of his career, he looked unstoppable. I was kinda hesitant on how he'd perform. This is his first playoff series against the defending champs, no doubt. I assume he'd have some nerves, but he played like a seasoned vet. Booker easily got any shot he wanted. If he wanted to take a mid-range jumper, he got to his spot and took it. If he wanted to drive to the rim, he did that with ease. The defense on Booker was kinda weird. They didn't double him that often and usually treated him like any other normal shooting guard. The Lakers had to pick their poison. Let Booker go one-on-one, or double-team him and give up a wide-open shot from somebody else? It was a hard decision to make, and ultimately, they decided to not double, well, most of the time, and instead forced Booker to go 1v1. He made them pay. When Anthony Davis left Game 6 after playing just 5 minutes, we all knew it was over. And that sums it up. That's why the Lakers and Heat got eliminated so early, despite reaching the finals in the previous year. Keep in mind, this is not a normal occurrence. Very rarely do we see both finals teams get knocked out in the first round a year later, especially since neither team had any major roster changes. It was the injuries, but also the lack of motivation they displayed before. The Lakers and Heat looked beaten down, a shell of their former selves. Do I think they could come back and make the finals again? Yes, for the Lakers, I do think so. Simply because it's not a personnel issue they're dealing with. They have the talent and the pieces, they've shown that before. For the Heat? I don't know. With the Nets looking super good and the Bucks as strong as ever, I don't see them reaching the finals again. Not in the Jimmy Butler era. Where do you see the Lakers and Heat going in the next few years? Anyway, as always, I'll see y'all next time. Peace.